Now, I'm going to talk about what is knowledge, and I'm going to talk about artistic research in blacksmithing. And the reason I will do so is because I am a researcher at the University of Gothenburg. And hi, my name is Gustav Thane, and I'm a blacksmith, I'm an artist, and I am a researcher. And I am going to just quickly now show you a few pictures of what I do to give you a feeling of for how, what, who I am. And then I'll talk. My plan now was that I would like you all to actually raise your hand or even speak straight out if something doesn't make sense, or if you want me to clarify something or talk about something or whatever. So it doesn't have to be a lecture, because if it was, I could just as well just show you a video of me talking. But I would like the connection, and I would also like you to understand what I'm saying. So whenever I am not understood, please let me know. And sometimes it's like, yes, just wait 2 minutes and I will get there. And sometimes it's like, oh, you think of it that way. Then I'm going to have to say this. So anyway, I am a blacksmith, and I was originally trained here at Stenby a few years ago. I think like 20 years ago, or something, 18 years ago. I think I finished my BA. Anyway, these are work that I've been doing since, and I have been doing some work with cemeteries, churches, ecclesial metalwork, and also some more experimental, more conceptual work. But yeah, so perhaps that was a bit too quick. Some fine art, some functional or cemetery work, some church work, semi-functional, some experimental work, research, and so on. And now we get to the question. So what is the knowledge? Now, this is quite a big question, and I'm thinking that there could be a lot of different answers to this question, and I'm going to give the answer that I have found when doing my research, and that means that it is an answer from a blacksmith point of view. So before getting too deeply into this, I'm just going to have to clarify a few things. When I say art, what I actually mean is fine art, music, craft, dance, food, etc. So when I say art, I don't only refer to fine art. When I say art, I don't only refer to blacksmithing. When I say art, I have a very wide definition of art in this presentation. And you could say that what I refer to is, or are, human expressions. And I actually haven't spell checked this presentation. Yeah, let's see what happens. Anyway, and when I say expressions, I also assume that the person who makes an expression also expects, or to some extent want it to make an impression, an impact in someone else. So it's a social ability or action. And when you make an expression, that can be an expression of knowledge. And since knowledge is our theme, that's a good thing. But it can also be an expression of ignorance. And or you could say an expression of not knowing, or expression of your personal opinion about something. And even though personal opinion and ignorance can be research, it can be knowledge, that's not the mainstream meaning of the word. And that's also not the meaning of the word that I will use for the most in this presentation. So art is not always knowledge, but still art can be like a language, for example, that you use your art to express yourself, to say something, to tell something to people. And that can be a very intricate thing. It can be a very nuanced thing, effective way of speaking or expressing yourself. And that more or less get under the skin of people interacting with this artistic expression. And when you do that, it is not necessarily an expression that is easily reducible into words. So artistic research, which is what I'm doing, is sometimes misunderstood to be a lot of talk and not very much workshop. So one of the easiest way to misunderstand artistic research, or for that sake, a lot of people here are doing a BA or MA in metal art or in craft, and when you do that, eventually you make an exam piece, a BA exam, MA exam, and that is a research product that you produce. Your exam work is a research project to some extent, especially the MA exam counts as formal research. And if you have done that already, you know that a lot of things does not make sense to sit down and write about. And that can be a good thing to know. Now, when you say something with your art, we also have another problem. Not only that it's not necessarily as well said in words, but also that perhaps I don't want to listen to you. Perhaps you say something with your art, you say it in a really intricate way, you get inside of under my skin, sort of. I more or less change into a different person from seeing your art. I'm not quite sure that's necessarily very respectful of you to change me that way. It's art can be a powerful tool to spread your personal belief, and ethically that is quite problematic. So I will talk about research, but I have this idea at the moment, at least, and in my research, that who am I to tell people how to think, what to think? Who am I to change the world in my image? And artistic research doesn't have to use art as a language in that way. Quite often, artistic research is actually just research, and not research as like what do you call it? Author, a person writing articles or something. No, what is it called?
Ethnographic.
No, I'm thinking about newspaper magazine people writing. Journalists, reporters, yes, those ones. Yeah, so they would do research. But when they do research, it's actually you can also do research that way. It's mostly about just researching something, that's just looking into something. And there's no formal academic rigor to that necessarily. It can be, often is, but it really doesn't have to be. So when I say research, I'm referring to this academic way of doing things in a rigorous way. And that means that research as in investigation. Now, you can investigate a thing, you can learn about that thing, and then you can that way gain knowledge and make that knowledge public. So art doesn't have to be a language where you say something, but art can also be a mood of investigation where you find something, where you put yourself in a situation where the material, where the techniques, where the work, artistic process will teach you something. And I think that is closer to the notion of knowledge and research. So a question that you can ask yourself, that I have asked myself, is that why would I frame my artistic investigation as knowledge? What's the point of that? This word knowledge is quite a formal word, and there comes a lot of baggage with it. So why would I do that? Why don't I just say, oh, but art is my language? Well, I think that one of the important reasons for why there is something called artistic research and why this artistic research frame artistic practice as knowledge or artistic publications, exhibitions, and so on, is because that makes it compatible with other knowledge, other forms of knowledge, and also other publications of knowledge. And this compatibility is largely what my research has been about. So what makes knowledge compatible then? And the short answer is theory. Theory is the thing that makes it trick. And I think a lot of people, at least when I was an MA student here many years ago, 18 years ago or something, they said to me, yeah, the BA exam has to be a serious project and so on, but the MA exam has to be rigorous, more rigorous, need to include theory. And you can ask yourself the question, how, or even why? And the reason you need theory is because you need precision in the work. And I think you could say that a lot of artistic practice is very precise. It is very rigorous. But I'm not sure it has to be. It can also be very spontaneous, very quick, very direct. But in artistic research, often the precision refers to something close to rigor, something that means that you really deeply look into a thing carefully, and you show everyone what you mean by that, what that entails. Because a really important thing is understanding. So artistic research tend to lead to understanding. And I think the misconception or the misunderstanding that is often happening here is that a lot of people would say, but that means that I would reduce my work into words, just like we talked in the beginning here. But that is not what it means. It doesn't mean that people should always understand exactly this art piece, the catchy point with it, or whatever. But it means that they need to understand something about what it means, what this piece of work means to them and to you and to a larger situation. So artistic research is art to investigate, to learn, to develop. Not only art to express, but art to find expression. Artistic research is framed as knowledge, and this knowledge is understood through theory. And when you do that, you are building knowledge to knowledge. So it is a collective project. Artists can sometimes be very me, mine, oh, I'm so important. Oh, look at me. This is genius. But in artistic research, there is this idea that, yeah, perhaps you're a genius, but if you don't build your research, your ideas on other people's ideas or other things that are already known, then you quite often like invent the same invention again and again that others have already done. So blacksmith knowledge, which is you could say it's the example I use in my research to talk about knowledge in a larger scope, because I'm a blacksmith, so that's what I know, and it is a way to see and realize things. So as a blacksmith, you engage with your material, you produce forms and objects and experiences, and when you do that, this investigative mood makes you see and realize things that you didn't know, see, or realize before you did those things. And the very point of blacksmith knowledge to be published is because as a blacksmith, or as a craft person, or as a researcher, you most likely have an alternative view to other people. So knowing through your craft is quite rare among researchers. Well, the craft of research, of course, is a craft that researchers know, but the sort of material motor skill craft, that's something that craft researcher have and can add to the whole civilization project, or whatever we call it, knowledge society, I don't know. And material engagement is one of those concepts that you could read about in artistic research or in research, alternative research of different sorts. But artistic research is often considered part of the humanities, but sometimes it overlaps with science and technology, and sometimes it is considered to be its very own island floating in the ocean of otherness. But material engagement is one of those concepts that brings the thinking of makers into the thinking of more mainstream research. So when the blacksmith, in this example, knows something, it is a thinking in patterns of skill that makes them know, see, and realize those things. So those patterns of thinking, they are quite interesting, I would say, because they're very similar to natural science in the way that when you forge, when you make something, this thing that you make cannot really break the natural laws or the laws of physics, or what we should call them. So it's very factual, it's very real, it's very shared. Metal is equally hard for me as it is for you. It can become equally hot for me as for you. It has those very shared characteristics, and at the same time, there's something very subjective to the whole thing, based on your prior experience, based on whatever you're doing at the very moment. So let's see now. So what I have done in my research is that I have been initiating something that I call a theory of the workshop floor. So a theory of the workshop floor is more or less a translation tool that makes the way of thinking in material through actions with a material. That mode of thinking should be somehow accessible to others than myself. And actually, I should go back to the beginning when I said that some people would say that, artistic research, isn't that just writing and reducing your amazing art piece into a few words? And I would say, no, it is not. But I have an experience. I actually just outside that building there many years ago. I stood talking to a person, a guest teacher, I think, at the university, and we talked about art, talked about practice, we talked about research, and then when she realized that I was a researcher, she said something. I don't remember the detail, but she said something about but, this and that philosopher said this and this, and therefore we artists we could just forge that, or we could just build that, we could just make that in our material. And I got the feeling that what she meant was that artistic research should be that we as artists illustrate what they as philosophers have figured out. Because when we do that, a lot of nuances and between the line stuff will be in the work. And I was a bit critical to that, so I think I offended her somehow. But I said something like, "But why? Why should we do that? I mean, anyone could do that. Why should we illustrate their insight? Why shouldn't we try to find insight through our methods, through our materials, through our work?" And she asked me, but how would that be? And I would say, yeah, well, action, techniques, work. And she said, oh no, but that's tacit knowledge. We can't talk about tacit knowledge. It's just not doable. And I had that feeling like, what? So just because it is described as tacit knowledge, then we're not allowed to talk about it. But that's what we know the best. So why can't we talk about that? And that's basically how I got into this whole idea. So what is knowledge? Okay, a lot of our knowledge, a lot of action knowledge, a lot of experience knowledge, a lot of artistic insight knowledge could be classified as tacit knowledge. Tacit as in tyst kunskap, as in you can't really talk, quiet knowledge. And so this theory of the workshop floor, it is to a large extent developed in order to recontextualize this tacit knowledge as knowledge or craft skills knowledge. So the foundation to that is craft techniques. So I have been conceptualizing, or more or less actually just there's a language at the workshop floor that I learned to speak when I started working in a workshop, originally under Otto, actually, who trained me back in Ryforsbruk, the forge that I've been working in for 10 years. But when we talk about craft at the workshop floor, we use words. We use all sorts of words, and we have no problem talking about the craft often. And then when we talk to other people outside of the workshop floor, it is quite common that we stop using those words because they're very specific. They're technical vocabulary that blacksmiths understand, but non-blacksmiths don't. But my idea was that those words, the words that describe actions, so techniques, as in to forge, that's the word, to bend, that's the word, to draw out, draw down, to twist, to hot set, those sort of concepts. I have formalized a way of describing what it is in the body that you know when you know those. So skills, when you do that, when you understand what a technique is, what an action is, then you can contextualize skill as the ability to with precision use that technique, that action, to produce an object or to shape material. And the idea here is that if we as craft specialists are going to do research, to develop knowledge, to create some sort of understanding, and we're going to do that in the way that no one else can do but us. So if we use, for example, anthropological methods in our research. There could very well be anthropologists who are so much better than us at doing that. If we use the scholarly methods, there could very well be art scholars who are so much better than us at doing that. But if we use our skill as a knowledge, different knowledge, then no one else can do that. That is sort of the gap in all of the knowledge projects of our time that we're actually needed for. So techniques, skills, and when you do that, when you frame techniques as a sort of concepts through which you engage with the material, and skill on top of that as the fine motor and the perceptive ability to do that. What happens then is that you produce art, for example, and this art will offer perspective. It will make you see something. It will make others see something. And perspective on things, a perspective that others do not have access to, that is in a way the knowledge that you have to offer, or at least when this mode of knowledge is formalized into a way of describing it that people who are not very skilled in blacksmithing would accept as, right, yeah, that is knowledge. It's not just your opinion. It's not just your misunderstanding. It is your knowledge. So this theory of the workshop floor that my research is about more or less offer a tool to show or to propose how engaging in materials with your hands physically gives you a perspective on things that is uniquely blacksmithing or uniquely crafty. I actually do a sidestep with ceramics craft or pottery actually in the research just to widen the whole scope. So it's craft theory, not necessarily blacksmithing theory. So the big difference to what I think, at least I thought writing a bachelor's exam paper would be, I thought I would write a lot of things about my craft, a lot of things about my process. And actually, what I think I should have done would have been to write a lot of things from my craft, not about the craft. So this theory would make it possible to talk from craft. And I've been talking for like 28 minutes now, so I'm going to wrap things up in 4, I think, or 3 bullet points. And one of them is that you can see and realize a lot of stuff from where you stand. So as a blacksmith, you have knowledge, you have abilities, you have a way, a perspective that other researchers do not have. And theory is the tool used to access this that you have in a way that makes it compatible to other ways of seeing and realizing. And knowledge in the format of seeing and realizing together. Knowledge is the format of seeing and realizing together in society. So this compatibility and creating that compatibility so that art becomes less of an opinion, less of an expression that is actually intrusive to people. It becomes an expression that actually adds something to people in a way that makes it possible for them to criticize it, to engage with it, to weigh it against other things. And I'm not saying that all good artistic research is good art, and not all good art is good artistic research. I think it could be slightly different in different ways. But what I have seen after like 7 years of research practice now, is that knowledge, framing craft in terms of knowledge, makes it possible to add something, to engage in academic discourse in ways that are quite interesting, and that is all I'm going to say. So thank you for listening. Let's do questions. No one did raise their hand, so perhaps I was super clear, I don't know. But yes, we should do this.
No, I'm just thinking the story about the woman who thought you couldn't talk about tacit knowledge. Isn't that because she didn't have it? So you can't talk about it if you don't have it. For us who possess tacit knowledge, it's easy to talk about because that's the world we live in. But if you come from an academic environment where you don't work with your hands at all, then you don't have that tool and you can't speak about it. And isn't that also the problem that you see in this, that you can talk about craft and art from your standpoint, but you won't necessarily reach the people who don't understand what you're talking about because they don't have the same reference as you.
Yes. So she was an artist herself in this example, and I think that she was capable to talk about those things in her art. But I think that because she had read books, she had heard talks, she had been tempted by the academic interests of non-crafting researchers, I think she made it easy for herself because the bigger community didn't have, as you say, this tacit knowledge, and therefore it becomes easy for her to just do philosophy instead, and say, oh, but my art adds something to philosophy by illustrating it, but I think she used word tacit knowledge to not have to deal with something closer to her personal side. But also this theory, it is meant to introduce people to this. I don't think a non-skilled person will become skilled from reading this, but I do think that to a larger extent, the academy would be able to accept that what we know is knowledge, and in a way showing how that works would be part of the research. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Yes. Anyone else? Yes.
Thank you. Can I ask you to talk a bit more about when you say it gives people the opportunity to be able to criticize the work that you're making more so than just art does? Like, what is it about the work and framed in that structure or that perspective that kind of opens it up more to that than something that's meant to be kind of standalone?
Thank you. Yes, interesting question. It's I would say that I think a lot of people in this room, a lot of people in the arts would say, oh, but we can already criticize. We can already do all that. But when we do so, it tends to be criticism or comments or engagement with the final piece of art. So what you see, what you feel, what you smell in the final piece of art, and that's good. I'm not. I don't think that is bad, but it's also not what I'm trained in. So there are art scholars who are really good at looking at art. They have library reference. They create knowledge in ways that I don't. I'm not as good as them, I think, to find this. But the point with this this approach would be that the thing you become capable, able, or you can talk about or talk from is not necessarily the piece of art, but is rather the process that led up to the piece of art. So you can talk about the piece of art already. There is language for that. But with this approach, you would be able to talk about the process that leads there as knowledge as well. And then you can juxtapose those two, or you can engage them in each other, and you get a tool to do that. What was the second part of the question? It was...
You're testing me now. I think I said, what is it about the format that allows people to get criticized and get into it more?
Yeah, the criticism, yeah. So my point is that craft actions, the craft process, that's a mode of thinking. It is a mode of approaching things, and I believe that that it is this thinking that you get to engage with, instead of thinking about the piece of art. You're criticizing the thinking that led up to the piece of art. And what's good with that, I think, is that when we do that, it becomes not only obvious that you all have a lot of knowledge that some people perhaps would not understand, but also that if you make art in this way, I can engage with your art and I can build on top of it, or I can build on the side of it, and our art becomes social. It becomes a shared process of knowledge production. So I think that is the main point. I'm not saying that we should steal each other's artistic intellectual property, but what I'm saying is that if you have a good idea and I have a good idea, we could combine them and make a really good idea. And then someone can combine those to make a super good idea. And I'm not sure ideas become better and better. I'm not sure that's how it works. But ideas and ways of thinking need to be on par with the time we live in, with the problems we see and with the solution we attempt. And I think that would be simplified, or not necessarily simplified, but clarified. I think it would be easier to see what is what. Did that respond to your question?
I think so. So, but if I understand right, are you saying that rather than having the piece of art be a kind of full stop standalone thing, if you open up the viewing of that art to a viewing of everything that goes into it, you also open it up to things coming out of it as well?
Yes, exactly. But the things coming out from it would then be understood in a different way than they would have been if you saw it without any context at all. So in contemporary craft, I would say that a lot of conceptual craft would simply adopt methods from conceptual fine art, and when doing that, you would get a way of working symbolically, a way of working. Now, I shouldn't go into this trap here. Okay, let's just end it there. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
But more questions, perhaps? Yes.
Try and talk loud. My question is a bit vague, maybe, but it's usually how it works. I'm wondering a little bit about the view of academics onwards to craft and artistic craft specifically. When academics and crafts looks at this field, it often looks at it like with an over-doming perspective, larger perspective. But I also often feel that academics is more like a method than something that can actually capture all of possibilities within craft. So there's a lot of things that it looks at it as like it's trying to define what it is, but at the same time it's creating a certain strain of the same thing it is a part of. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah. So basically this is more a comment than a question, but you're saying more or less that academic methods tend to limit the scope of the art, more or less. Is that what you're saying?
I think I believe academics influences the results to a certain extent that it's not able anymore to talk about the completeness of that.
Yeah.
It's like because you're often trying to define something when something is when you're unable to define something, the results will be very different.
Yeah.
And by trying to find this method to get to a certain result, I wonder, can you really make a science out of something that is also trying to defy the science kind of at the same time?
Yeah. So the question is, can you make science of the thing that sort in a way defies the science?
Yeah, basically.
That's basically, yeah, it's just a short way of putting the question on the tape, more or less. But yes, you're correct in a lot of ways, but also it's not quite that simple. In a way, that is what theory does. It limits something, but also there are approaches that really embrace the wholeness of things, and those approaches would come with a fluffiness that sometimes destroys what they're talking about, and sometimes actually keep the what you call it the mystery or the magic in, for example, art. So I don't think it is as easy as saying that academic approaches doesn't work. I would rather say that when you make an approach, if you make an approach from academic perspectives, you have to be really careful that you don't pick a theory or approach that limits your work. And there are approaches that do not limit your work. And of course, it also depends a little about what you think about your work, because the wholeness that you talk about is perhaps not the wholeness that a chemist would talk about in your work. There's like this big saying that I think we are 70% water. The human body is 70% water, I think. But then there's another saying that human body is 93 or something percent carbon. So how does this work? How can we be 100 and I don't want to do that now. More than 100% of something. And the thing is that depending on how you see it, you can make conclusions in different ways. And the very point of this whole theory thing that I'm doing here is that I'm trying to add a theory to a big menagerie of theories, because some of the things that I find to be really important in my practice were not included. So in order to find a wholeness that is relevant to my way of seeing it, I added this piece of theory. But I don't think it is as easy as saying that academic views need to limit art, because they don't. They tend to angle and look at something in high zoom or very closely, and when they do that, of course they miss a lot of other things. But there are also those who zoom out and see the wholeness. But when you see the wholeness, there would be something different that you see than if you look into the close. So it's a choice by the researcher in this case. And you chose to limit. I mean, it's a bit like, that water and carbon perhaps didn't. I'm not sure I finished that story, but as in, if you are a chemist, you could look at physics and say, "Oh, they're doing it all wrong. They don't get it." And if you're a chemist, you could look at physics and say, "Oh, they're doing it all wrong. They don't get it." And this is the thing among, I think, all academic fields of research. And I think also that is the very point why it is a danger for us as practicing artists to use conventional art scholarship when talking about our art, because conventional art scholarship is very good at looking from the outside of art, and it can be used from the inside, but there are some things from the inside of art that I think are more difficult to reach that way. And I had a thought here about this that I forgot now. But yeah. Let's. Did I answer any of your questions? Yeah. Okay. Let's hope so. We could talk more on the public.
More questions.
Yeah. Let's see if someone else have a question. Yes. You're so close. I can give you a microphone.
Could you give us an example of how to speak from craft as opposed to speaking about craft?
So, this question of the difference in talking about craft from craft can be answered or addressed in a lot of different ways. But I would say one example could be that if let's actually I'm improvising now here. I think we should have use of a picture for this. Okay, so let's do. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So this is a long journey to get back. Yeah. Let's do this one. So this is a cross. A cross to carry in precision in the church, and then put down, and again, and you read, and you turn towards the cross, and then you walk, and there's a ritual in some churches to do that, and you could look at the ritual, how it's affected by this object, and you can say, yeah, this cross it helps them in this ritual because it's not soldered or welded, but it's riveted, which means that it is soft in the construction somehow. So when you set it down like that, it's like it's responding in a very way, almost. And in this ritual, that helps the ritual leader to finish the action, because because it gets this feeling of stability, or like throwing a wet sock on the floor compared to a dry sock on the floor. Good example. Good, Gustav. Anyway, so then I would talk about this thing for that friction, for that experience it offers to the ritual, which I think is useful. But I talk about the thing then. But when I talk from the thing, I could say something like, for example, I have brazed this piece of metal here, and when I did so, the metal poured out on the metal, the brass, not brass, the copper, the bronze, poured out on the iron in a way that gave this pattern. And when it did so, it melted unevenly. And when it melted unevenly, I had this, or when I had several pieces of those, and I had to choose which one to put here, I realized that when we talk about the cross like this in relation to a Christian congregation, a lot of people, all people are different, and some people would have a scarred soul. They would have an uneven pattern of traces from something, and embossing. Yeah, that's the name for the technique. Embossing metal like this also makes the iron underneath it very, very soft. It's like what do you call it? Soft, mjuk, yeah. What's that?
Oh.
Annealing, yeah. So it's like annealing. And when I did this, I started thinking of people in terms of annealing and in terms of scars and the annealing that happens and can happen underneath the scars, and how that can play with this piece here, which is stainless steel, and reflecting the underbelly of this thing, but also offering a play between the two. So what I'm trying to say here is that when I talked about this as the ritual, the blacksmith became a person who facilitated that ritual, which is good. But when I talked about it from the metal, the meaningfulness of this piece became an insight about social relationships and people, and one material became, or momentarily came to represent characteristics in a human being. So my head was sort of leaking things between social interaction with characteristics of materials, and that leakage between those two made them momentarily exist at the same place in my head. I was thinking at them as the same thing, and that would teach me something about people. And when I talk like this, I'm talking from the craft. But when I talked about the ritual, I talked from the ritual perspective. So I think, is that a answer to your question? Or
It's a little bit fuzzy, but it's a good start.
okay, a bit fuzzy, but a good start.
Stay fuzzy. That's perfectly okay.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So the main point here is that if we can talk about annealing and we can talk about embossing as words, and as a person understand what that means, then this idea that I had about human beings, how they interact with each other, has quite a lot of nuance to it. But a person who doesn't know those techniques, they may very well miss a lot of that nuance. Yeah. But any more questions?
I think we're out of time very soon.
Yes, very soon. Less than 6 minutes. Oh, 3 minutes, because we started too late. Okay, so just wrapping up. Artistic research is one way of completely nerding away about what you enjoy doing. Artistic practice can be as well. And we need to, or by that way, teaching blacksmithing can also be. There are a lot of paths that you can take as a craft practitioner, and they are not all about making expensive objects for rich people to show how rich they are to poor people, or rather to other rich people, I guess, because that made me a bit sad once upon a time. But then I realized, oh, there's so much more, and this is just one of all those things. I hope you find one of those things that you can be absolutely passionate about. Thank you for listening.